All right, picture this. It's 1982, and you're sitting right in front of a Commodore 64. You're typing out a lengthy program, but at the exact same time, the border of your screen is pulsating in these rhythmic colors, and complex polyphonic music is just pumping out of the SID chip. It feels like this machine is effortlessly juggling a dozen tasks at once. But here is the core mystery we're unraveling in today's explainer. How did a humble 1 megahertz machine with incredibly strict limitations seem to do the absolute impossible?
And that brings us to this massive paradox. On one hand, you have the user's experience, a vibrant, dynamic environment that feels like true multitasking. But the harsh hardware reality? Well, the heart of this machine is the 6510 processor. It has a single core, it runs at just 1 megahertz, and it executes exactly one instruction at a time. There is absolutely no raw power here, and there's no true multitasking operating system running under the hood. So, how in the world do we bridge this massive gap between illusion and reality?
To figure that out, we are going to systematically peel back the layers of this machine. 1, the illusion of multitasking. 2, hijacking system flow. 3, anatomy of basic memory. 4, little endian rules. And 5, automation and hacker mentality. Let's dive in.
Section 1, the illusion of multitasking.
Since we know the processor can literally only do one thing at a time, that perceived multitasking is actually built on an illusion of perfect split-second timing. The secret sauce making this all possible is something called an interrupt. Think of it exactly as it sounds. Instead of having multiple cores working at once, the 6510 processor relies on hardware interrupts to temporarily pause the main operating system, which is known as the kernel. It pauses the main task a staggering 60 times a second, darts off to execute a background task, like pulsing those screen colors, and then seamlessly jumps back to whatever you were typing. It's like hitting pause, running to do a chore, and coming back before anyone even notices you left. Think about standard execution. The processor waits for input, moving sequentially from command A to B to C. It's linear, it's locked, and it's waiting on you. But when an interrupt triggers, it completely blows up that linear path. The system takes this dynamic, high-speed detour, runs your custom visual or audio routine in the background, and merges right back into standard traffic without missing a beat.
Section 2, hijacking system flow.
Now, the system triggers these interrupts naturally just for its own housekeeping. But to truly take the reins of the Commodore 64 and create our own magic, we have to learn how to actively hijack this system flow. To do that, we need to locate the control intersection, specifically 2 memory addresses known as vectors, 0314 and 0315. You can think of these vectors as physical signposts. When the system pauses 60 times a second, it checks these exact addresses to see where it should go to run the background code. By changing the values at 0314 and 0315, we are literally ripping up the operating system's default signpost and pointing the processor directly toward our own custom code instead.
So how do we actually pull off this digital heist without crashing the whole machine? Well, it requires a super precise 5-step surgical procedure. Step 1, we issue an SEI command to disable all new interrupts. This is essentially putting up a red light so the system doesn't interrupt us while we're in the middle of changing the signs. Steps 2 and 3, we write the lower byte of our code's address into 0314 and the higher byte into 0315. Step 4, we issue a CLI command to turn the interrupts back on. And step 5, and this is absolutely vital, when our custom code finishes running, it must end with a jump to address 0E31. That right there is the return ramp back to the operating system, ensuring the machine stays perfectly stable.
Section 3, anatomy of basic memory. Okay, so we know how to hijack the flow, but where does our code actually live? We need to crack open the physical vault of the RAM itself. Code doesn't just float around in the ether. Every single time you type a command into C64 BASIC, the machine acts like this meticulous filing clerk, packing your text into physical memory. What looks like a simple line of text on your screen actually possesses a rigid 5-part anatomy sitting right under the hood. Let's quickly break down those 5 structural elements so you know exactly what we're dealing with. First up, there's a 2-byte pointer telling the computer exactly where the next line of code begins. Then 2 bytes storing your actual line number. Next is a single byte command token. After that, your parameters, the raw text or numbers you typed. And finally, a single null byte to mark the absolute end of the line.
Section 4, little endian and tokenization.
Now that we see the memory structure, we actually have to read it. But the Commodore 64 relies on some highly counterintuitive logic to do this. First up is the little endian rule. As humans, we read numbers from left to right, largest to smallest, right? But the 6510 is an 8-bit processor. It can only swallow 8 bits or 1 byte at a time. So when it looks at a 16-bit memory address, it completely flips our logic upside down. It reads and writes the lower byte first, followed by the higher byte. If you want to point the machine to logical address $80B, you have to physically write it into the RAM backwards as $OB and then $08. If you don't grasp this backwards logic, you literally can't navigate the architecture.
Rule number 2 is tokenization. And man, this is a masterclass in efficiency. Remember, you only have 64 kilobytes of RAM for everything, the whole shebang. So instead of wasting 5 precious bytes to store the letters print, the operating system instantly compresses that recognized command into a single hexadecimal byte, or a token. The word print becomes the hex value 99. The command sys becomes 90E. This on-the-fly compression acts like a space-saving alchemist, leaving maximum room in memory for your actual complex logic.
And then we have the unsung hero of this entire architecture, the null byte, represented as 000. Every single line of code must have a physical end. The 00 byte acts as an invisible, concrete wall. When the processor hits it, it knows to stop reading immediately. Without this one single marker, the 6510 processor would just keep rolling down the tracks, blindly swallowing random memory garbage until the entire system instantly crashed. Let's pull all of this together into what I like to call the ultimate translation matrix. This is the real aha moment where human intent translates into machine reality. You type 10 SYS 4096. That's all you see. But physically, starting down at address 0801, the machine writes the little endian pointer to the next line. Then your line number 10. Then the tokenized 90E for SYS. Then the raw ASCII numbers for 4096. And finally, that critical 00 wall. This matrix right here, this is the map to the magic. Section 5. Automation and hacker mentality.
So why go through all this trouble to understand the anatomy of memory? Because it allows us to build a bridge between the blazing speed of raw assembly language and user-friendly basic programming. The ultimate trick for an 8-bit developer wasn't just writing a fast interrupt routine, it was making it effortless for the end user. By understanding exactly how a basic line is structured in memory, a clever programmer could write a lightning-fast assembly program that secretly injects a fake basic line, like 10 SYS 4096, directly into address 0801. So when the user loaded the program and casually typed run, they were unknowingly triggering a perfectly placed system hijack, launching the interrupts and all the magic completely automatically. And that brings us to a really crucial realization. It's so easy to look back at these old machines as, primitive toys, but the architecture of a 1 megahertz CPU and 64 KB of RAM was never a true roadblock. For a whole generation of coders, these severe, unforgiving limitations were the ultimate canvas. They were the very inspiration that birthed legendary software engineering.
Which leads us right to the threshold of the true hacker mindset. We know the rules now. We know the computer blindly follows the pointers it finds in memory. So I want to pose a pivotal question straight from our source material. What would happen if you bypassed the keyboard entirely and intentionally manipulated the pointer for the next line address in the raw memory?
The answer is absolutely mind-bending. You completely break the system's standard rules and create a non-linear architecture. By artificially changing those pointers, you can create invisible lines of code that the system executes, but the user can never even see when they type the list command. You can redirect the pointers backwards to create infinite loops with no exit. This isn't just using the computer anymore, this is digital wizardry. This is where changing a single byte elevates you from a standard user to a true architect. Ultimately, the true brilliance of the Commodore 64 wasn't just the graphics, and it wasn't just the incredible SID chip sound. The magic was the architecture itself. It was the ingenious, scrappy ways human beings learned to navigate and hijack those hidden limitations to create something that felt completely boundless.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? If overcoming severe hardware limits like 1 megahertz speeds and tiny memory vaults created this unparalleled level of engineering genius back in 1982, what invisible walls and hidden architectures are lying dormant inside the technology you and I are using right now, just waiting for the right person to look past the illusion, find the source code, and build their own magic? Thanks for joining me on this explainer. Keep digging into those systems, and I'll catch you next time.
had a bezel keyboard, heavy as a door, 64K of magic, and I still wanted more. I typed in my command line, feeling like a king. Load star, comma, 8, comma, 1, and prayed it loads the thing. The screen was blue, the cursor bright, the tape was screaming through the night. Commodore 64, you're my pixel superstar, with your chunky little graphics and your SID chip from afar. Commodore 60, you were slow but never poor. You made us wait forever, then we came back for more. My joystick had one button. My joystick, one button, but I pressed it like a pro. Jumping over pixels in a world of green and gold. The sprites were square and funny, the music had that bite. The music had that bite. Every tiny loading screen became a Friday night. The floppy clicked, the tape would cry, but every crash was worth a try. Commodore 64, you're my pixel superstar, with your chunky little graphics and your SID chip from afar. Commodore 60, you were slow but never poor. You made us wait forever, then we came back for more. No Wi-Fi, no updates, no cloud account to sign. Just cables, keys, and patience, and a loading bar divine. No touchscreen, no drama. No battery, no drama, no battery at one. Just plug it in and type away, that's how we had our fun. Commodore 64, you're my pixel superstar, with your chunky little graphics and your SID chip from afar. Commodore 60, you were slow but never poor. You made us wait forever, then we came back for more. So boot it up, don't shut the door. We're dancing with the Commodore 64K, but dreams galore. Long live the Commodore 64.